2025 Hungarian Grand Prix race notes. Sabrina's race notes. Dick, here are my thoughts on what was ultimately a race defined by strategic brilliance, championship mathematics, and the inevitable McLaren showdown we've all been anticipating. Number 1. Seeing Bortoleto between Max and Fernando, a generational moment. The sight of Gabriel Bortoleto running between Max Verstappen and Fernando Alonso during the first stint was more than just good television. It was a symbolic passing of the torch in Formula One. Here we had the sport's most dominant driver of the current era, arguably its greatest living talent in Alonso, and Brazil's newest hope sandwiched between them on track. That image captures everything compelling about this sport: the relentless march of time, the emergence of new talent, and the democracy of wheel-to-wheel racing where position matters more than reputation. For Bortoleto to hold his own in that company speaks volumes about his composure and Sauber's remarkable mid-season transformation. Number 2. Strategic miscalculation and penalties. The Hülkenberg false start. Nico's troubles began before the race even started with a false start that earned him a 5-second penalty and forced an early pit stop on lap 6 to serve it. Sometimes in Formula One, small mistakes cascade into large strategic complications. What should have been a straightforward race became a damage limitation exercise from the opening moments. This incident highlights how unforgiving the sport can be. One momentary lapse in concentration at the start costs not just grid position, but undermines your entire race strategy. It's particularly frustrating for a driver of Nico's experience, who has built his reputation on consistency and avoiding precisely these kinds of costly errors. Number 3. Charles's heartbreak. The technical excellence meets cruel reality. Charles Leclerc's brilliant start and early race pace only made his final stint collapse more gut-wrenching to witness. This is what makes Formula One simultaneously beautiful and brutal. You can execute everything perfectly, demonstrate genuine championship caliber pace, and still see victories slip away due to factors beyond your control. The technical issue that cost him podium contention reminds us that in this sport, man and machine must be working in perfect harmony, and when that partnership breaks down, even the most talented drivers become passengers. I'm eager to understand what exactly went wrong mechanically because Charles showed he had pace to fight for victory before his car betrayed him. Number 4. Strategic excellence and championship mathematics. The McLaren-Ferrari pit battle. The strategic battle between McLaren and Ferrari showcased pit stop execution at its finest. But more importantly, it highlighted how 9 points can fundamentally alter championship psychology. With Piastri's lead now trimmed to single digits, both McLaren drivers enter the summer break knowing that every strategic decision, every start, every defensive move carries exponentially more weight. Amid the disappointment of Charles's technical troubles, Ferrari's pit crew delivered when the pressure was highest. Their 2-second stop to cover Piastri's undercut attempt was textbook execution, the kind of precision that championship fights are built on. This is the Ferrari we need to see consistently: technically excellent, strategically sharp, and operationally flawless. If they can marry this level of execution with the pace Charles showed early in the race, Ferrari could become serious spoilers in individual races, even if the championship contention remains beyond their reach this season. This compression changes everything about how both drivers, i.e. Lando and Oscar, approach the remaining races as well. For Lando, 9 points represents breathing room, close enough to remain aggressive, distant enough to avoid desperation. For Oscar, it's the sweet spot of championship pressure, significant enough to maintain focus, narrow enough to create genuine vulnerability. Ferrari's pit crew excellence in covering Piastri's undercut attempt was textbook, but it served as a reminder that in a compressed championship fight, strategic precision from all teams becomes crucial in determining the eventual winner. Number 5. Mercedes' strategic perversion. Engineering courage under pressure. Mercedes' decision to revert to their pre-Imola rear suspension configuration proved to be a masterstroke in engineering and psychology. George Russell's podium finish validated the team's willingness to admit that they had taken a wrong development path and step backwards to move forward. This suspension reversion, abandoning an upgrade that had been problematic since Barcelona, demonstrates the kind of strategic flexibility that championship contending teams must possess. The cooler Hungarian conditions negated Mercedes' well-documented struggles in heat, but more importantly, the suspension change gave both Russell and Antonelli the confidence to attack rather than manage their cars. Sometimes in Formula One, the boldest strategic move is admitting your previous strategy was wrong. For a team as proud and technically sophisticated as Mercedes, publicly abandoning a significant upgrade requires considerable organizational humility. Precisely the kind of mindset needed to find their way back to regular competitiveness. Number 6. Lewis and the 8-8 announcement, reflection and transition. Lewis's post-qualifying comments combined with the looming 8-8 announcement suggest we're witnessing a period of profound self-reflection from the 7-time champion. At 40, even Lewis must grapple with the reality that time moves forward for everyone. His move to Ferrari was supposed to be about chasing the elusive 8th title, but perhaps these moments force even the greatest competitors to consider what legacy truly means. Is he positioning himself for a graceful transition from driving to another role within the sport? The timing of these announcements rarely happens in isolation. Number 7. The inevitable McLaren battle. Championship psychology. The summer break timing of this Lando-Oscar showdown couldn't be more perfect for both drivers' mental preparation. Lando needed this victory desperately, not just for championship points, but for his psychological well-being. Another loss to Oscar, especially after that poor start, would have haunted him for 2 weeks. Instead, he demonstrated the composed execution that championship contenders must possess when opportunities arise. His calm management throughout the final stint, knowing Oscar was charging with fresher tires and increasing pace, showed a maturity that has sometimes seemed elusive in pressure moments. Oscar, meanwhile, proved that he has the raw speed and racecraft to match anyone on the grid. His charge through the field after the second stop was championship caliber driving. Yes, he'll be disappointed not to win, but he also gained something invaluable. The knowledge that he can extract maximum performance when it matters the most. The fact that he came within 7/10 of victory despite being on a strategically inferior 2-stop approach should give him tremendous confidence. This is the year for both of them. McLaren has the dominant car, and alignments like this are rare in Formula One. They both understand the windows close quickly in this sport. The championship fight between them will define the remainder of this season. Number 8. Max's overtaking mastery. Excellence despite frustration. Max's multiple overtakes at turn 6 showcase why he remains the gold standard for racecraft, even when wrestling with a car he clearly dislikes. His ability to find grip and opportunity where others see only limitation separates true champions from talented drivers. The frustration we heard over the radio throughout the weekend tells a deeper story about his situation at Red Bull. His decision to stay with Red Bull despite the clear performance deficit is fascinating from a business psychology perspective. It's the classic devil you know scenario. He's well compensated, has significant latitude as a champion, and can essentially call his own shots. Many people remain in suboptimal situations because the uncertainty of change feels riskier than the known limitations of their current environment. Max may believe he can influence positive change at Red Bull more effectively than starting over elsewhere, even if the optimism might be misplaced. Number 9. George's summer break confidence, timing, and opportunity. George Russell may be walking into the summer break with renewed confidence after that podium finish. The timing couldn't be better for his contract negotiations and long-term positioning within Mercedes. More importantly, the scepter of Max potentially targeting his seat has diminished significantly, at least for now. George has consistently delivered when Mercedes has given him competitive machinery, and this performance reinforces his value as both a current contributor and future team leader. Number 10. The tightest field in F1 history, margins and mastery. When the field is separated by tenths rather than seconds, and Budapest becomes Monaco without walls, qualifying and strategic execution become paramount. This creates a paradox for evaluating team and driver performances. Brilliant racecraft can be negated by a single strategic misstep or a poor Saturday. The compressed competition makes every decision more consequential, every mistake more costly. This reality should inform how we assess achievements heading into the summer break. A driver extracting a points finish from 16th on the grid deserves as much recognition as someone converting pole position into victory. The current competitive balance means that small margins, whether in car development, strategic calls, or pure driving performance, create outsized results. It's what makes this era of Formula One simultaneously more unpredictable and more rewarding for those who execute flawlessly when it matters most. Dick's Race Notes.
Well, hey everybody, welcome to Two Guys, a Girl in F1. Once again, I'm flying solo for my race notes for Hungary. I thought this race was a really interesting race from a strategy perspective. I'd be interested to hear what some of your comments may be, but, in my analysis of the race and what I read from other people analyzing the race, it sure sounds like that people opted for a two-stop strategy or a one-stop strategy based on really either how they qualified or where they wound up after the first 2 or 3 laps. And case in point was Lando Norris. He kind of blew the start, fell back to like 4th or 5th, I think, in the race. And it became very clear that, it took some time for him to get past Fernando Alonso. And so they began questioning him on the radio, hey, do you think you can stretch the tires further and all that? And eventually they opted for a one-stop strategy. On the other hand, the guys that were running up front, meaning Oscar and Charles and George, all those guys had no choice. They pretty much had to go with a two-stop strategy simply because that's what they were doing, and they couldn't afford to give away the advantage of having tires that were old compared to their opposition. And so it worked brilliantly for Lando. I don't think he could have stayed in front of Oscar another 2 or 3 laps. I mean, Oscar just had way more tire underneath him, but full credit to Lando. I thought he drove an exceptional race. So did Piastri for that matter, but he was under enormous pressure, especially after having a not so hot Belgian Grand Prix the week before. Oscar won it. He was kind of losing ground. He needed to win this race in order to go into the summer break, with a reasonable points gap. I think he's down 9 points to Oscar, but had he not won, he would have been behind like 23 points, which is almost a Grand Prix win. And that assumes, of course, that your opposition has broken down. So I think it was a hugely important win for Lando. I think for Oscar, it was one of those he would have liked to have won the race, but I don't know that he necessarily needed to win that race. It was more of a nice to have, whereas for Lando, it was a must have. So ought to be fairly interesting here. We're now 2 races past the halfway point in the season. That means I think we've got like 10 races to go, something like that. So should be very, very interesting. I don't see anybody challenging the McLarens. You might have a one-off, but consistently challenging them, I don't think it's going to happen. Charles Leclerc, I thought he drove a terrific race until something started going awry in his Ferrari. It's not been disclosed what happened. Clearly, Ferrari knows what happened, but I really feel for the guy because he put in quite a stellar lap to claim pole position, although I think, again, that was a bit of an outlier. The weather conditions had changed a lot, and somehow Charles made it work for him, and it didn't work so well for the McLarens. And I thought it was really interesting in the post-qualifying press conference. Charles said that after today, he's not sure he understands anything about Formula One, or words to that effect. And certainly then it played its hand out again on Sunday for him. And, early in the race, it looked like he was not going to be beaten. But then, of course, he started running into those problems. And the next thing you know, he was struggling big time. And George Russell came in and captured third place from him. And I got to say this, Mercedes went back to some of their bits and configuration from Imola, and I think the car works again. I think they had been struggling just a little bit, but George drove to what the car could deliver, and maybe deliver a little bit more than expected. And so, like I said before, all throughout the season, he's just having one of those sneakily quiet years where he's doing really, really well. I'm hoping that these new old upgrades that they're bringing to the car will restore Kimi Antonelli's confidence, because clearly he has been under the white hot spotlight, and I think that the requirements, shall we say, of being a Mercedes driver, that's a lot for a rookie to have to deal with, in addition to just learning how to race effectively in Formula One. The other side of it is Gabriele Bortoleto. That guy has been super impressive. He's been put in a position where he went with the least favored team on the grid. And as the car has improved, so has his performances as he gets more and more seasoning in Formula One. Really remarkable what that young man is doing. So I'll be interested to see how this season goes on. But clearly he's giving Nico Hülkenberg something to think about. Aston Martin, okay, those guys are about as schizophrenic as it gets. In Belgium, they qualified 19th and 20th. At Hungary, they qualified 5th and 6th and finished 5th and 7th, I think it was. They went back to the future, so to speak, and they put on their floor from Imola. Again, here we go again. Same as Mercedes to a certain degree. And then they kept the front wing that they debuted in Belgium, and suddenly the car was really quick. Now, I think a lot of that was circuit specific. I think you get to a place like Monza or Baku with that long, long front straightaway, Las Vegas with that long straightaway. I don't see them, being a fancied runner at all. But at other circuits, a Singapore or something like that, even Coda maybe, man, I don't know. They might be pretty strong. So certainly Zandvoort, Fernando always goes well there. So, I think that there's a good possibility that they could pick up some pretty useful points at some races. And then at other tracks, I think there's going to be other cars that just, are more well-suited to those circuits. One of the things that I've been wondering about is Williams has been in a real dry spell lately. Both of the cars have really not done that great. Not horrible, but not great. But Hungary, they were way off the pace. And so I don't know if this is just because they've turned their attention to the 2026 car. There's no more development, and everybody else is getting maybe a little bit incrementally better, or if the car is just circuit specific that they just didn't have a chance. So anyway, I think time will tell on that one. Certainly at Monza, you would expect the Williams to go quick. So we'll see. So overall, I thought it was a very interesting race to see how the two different strategies, the one-stop strategy, the two-stop strategy, how they converged right towards the very end. And I think it's a real testimony to the way the the strategy calls were made and just the brain power on the strategy side. It was fascinating. And I thought it was a very interesting race, even though it was on a track that, much like Monaco, it's almost impossible to pass on. There were a few passes, but most of them came in the pits due to strategy. So anyway, we now head into the summer break. The next race is at Zandvoort on the last Sunday of August. So that's like, I don't know, August 29th or something like that. And 28th, I think it is. And going to be really interesting to see how the teams come back, if any new parts come in for upgrades and all that. I think Ferrari and Mercedes are going to be slugging it out for second and third, but then there's the midfield battle, and I think it's going to be a roll of the dice. It just depends on what track you happen to be at as to who steps forward, kind of like what we saw with Aston Martin this time. So I will say this as a parting shot. When asked after the race what Alonso thought about his car, he said that the good news is that they had good pace and they brought home 2 cars in the points, and it was a good haul of points. Bad news is they have no idea why they were fast. I love that. So who knows? It ought to be interesting, and we'll know here in about 4 weeks' time. Thanks for listening, and if you've got any comments, please let us know. We're always happy to hear from our listeners.